Alright guys, so we've had to move the Laymen studio again. Sydney lockdown laws are getting even worse, so we can't even...
You're no longer allowed to leave within a 5k... You have to stay within a 5k radius of your home.
It's getting hard.
So this is our makeshift studio. Yeah. We had these lying around, to be perfectly honest with you.
This is the best we've got, but we wanted to do a video.
With the Venetian blinds.
Yeah, we didn't even put them down. But look, this is what we've done today. We didn't want to miss this video. This is actually sponsored by Universal today. We have been watching a movie called Come Play.
We did watch.
We
haven't stopped halfway through it to make this. We didn't stop
and like, you know what, let's talk about it. We watched the entire video. Let's get into it. There's some good stuff that we loved about this film. There's some stuff that we thought could definitely be a lot better. But let's get into it. All this and more after the drop. Okay, first things first.
I'm the realist.
I like horror movies. I
love horror.
I love horror movies. My girlfriend does not like horror movies. I love them though. One thing I really like about a horror movie is, of course, you get scared. But sometimes they come along and they're not really scary. So this one, first and foremost, I didn't find this to be hugely scary. It's not really for me trying to be a big scary movie. It's more like trying to play with ideas, like what technology can be, like an iPad or a phone, and what kind of like horror stuff can happen when an iPad's involved and there's like a creature in an iPad or some shit like that. Before we even get there, should we actually talk about what the movie's about?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think the objective of this movie is to disturb you rather than scare you, and I think it does a good job. So what is Come Play? It is it is a film about. Well, it's actually I was quite impressed with the premise. So it's a film about a non-verbal autistic boy who is essentially his main mode of communication is using a smartphone
or an iPad
or writing. But the main avenue is this smartphone with an interface of words that he's able to click, and that's how he can talk to his parents. So
and you can see how those things might hinder him in telling his parents, for instance, that there's a monster in the house and whatever. So those kind of things are kind of perfectly set up for the events that happen.
Yes. And so essentially what happens is through this smartphone, let's call a visitor, a very lonely visitor, tries to make contact, and the rest of the film kind of ensues without getting into spoiler territory. It's kind of all about this really lonely figure named Larry. Larry the Loner trying to make a friend. And
from the get-go, the actual movie itself kind of jumps straight into it too. There's very little time that it tries to build up the scene or the environments around. It really just gets straight into it.
So very quickly it introduces the characters. You've got obviously the husband and wife and their son. It introduces his learning environment at school. And given that he's, autistic, not specifically non-verbal, he obviously has a hard time making friends at school. That's why this creature's advances kind of get the hooks into it, and then it ensues.
Because there's definitely something. This character really does want a friend, so it's kind of this weird thing where this child is grappling like, how much do I really want to invite this into my life, kind of thing. And it's an interesting concept. And before we even go on, there is one actor that I did know from this. The girl from Community.
Yeah, Julia
Guglia.
Yeah, Gillian Jacobs. She's from Community. But yeah, for me, the standout performance in this was actually the little boy.
Yeah, I think the parents' performance were good, but the child's performance, he's no older than 8 or 9, man. He's able to actually really get this character down. There is no doubt at any moment that he is struggling with communication issues and all that kind of stuff, right? He's just so... by the end of the movie, I was like, holy shit, that's actually done very, very well.
And for
very
me,
good casting.
I haven't really had much exposure at all to, anyone with non-verbal forms of autism. And so for me, it was actually kind of eye-opening. It was nice to see he's not the right term, but it was good to see that there was a story being told. There was a story being told, of a child who does have autism.
Yeah, but off the back of that, I think the horror aspect of this, don't go in. For me, I didn't think it was the scariest movie I've ever seen. It was a slow burner. The entire thing felt like it moved relatively consistently, but the one thing I say is I didn't feel like I saw enough of the creature. I didn't see enough of the actual villain in this, the actual, horror thing. It was very much a slow burn to the point where, yes, at the very end, you see a lot more of it, but for me, I would have liked to see a lot more of that.
I don't agree. I think they did a pretty good job of kind of teasing you a little bit. There's some very creative ways that the monster is revealed to you in the film through use of
it's all digital in
different technologies. Or there's this one bit with if you do see it, there's this one bit with some newspapers. Very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yes.
So there were certainly some creative ideas, but I think for me, if I was to sort of criticize the film, I think where it shines in creativity in some areas, that creativity is almost expressed in equal measure with some more derivative kind of story tropes. You know, like we've all seen people hide under the bed.
Yeah.
We've all seen it. Like there are moments like that where you're like, where I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of treading old ground. But I think for the most part, it did, for me, something quite novel, quite new.
Yeah.
And it told a story about a kid that I'd never really seen a story told about before.
I haven't seen a lot of technological horror in the way of like, it's using technology to do this, right? It's usually like The Shining or something, or like The Exorcist.
Or you use a Ouija board.
All that stuff, right? This is more like, all right, let's make this with like, you can only see the demon through the iPad or like through the phone camera, like that kind of stuff's kind of cool. I actually thought that was actually really cool.
And I mean, I think something important to discuss is that this is kind of being sold as a horror movie. How do you feel about it as a horror movie? Do you think it was an effective horror movie?
There was a few jump scares, but again, it was more for me a steady simmer. It was a steady simmer, but like, you know, like, did you feel like it was scary? I didn't feel like it was scary, but again, I still think what they did, like, you're right, with like the news, there's a moment with like newspapers hitting this invisible demon thing, and like, you're like, oh shit, there he is, or like using certain things, like one of those old slappy, you know, like slapping the wall.
Those things, they're like that red, they look, I don't know. It's
basically like lollies, but like you can slap them on the wall.
And they stick, and then they eventually get covered in like an entire pocket's full of lint, and the toy is
can't use it anymore. But like those moments like that feels creative, and that was when I was like, okay, this is doing stuff that I like, you know. But I don't think for me, I wasn't hugely scared. Yeah, maybe because I'm like a 30-year-old dude that don't really get scared as much.
Bro,
I'm a 30-year-old man, you know.
Like 30?
Men don't get scared, dude.
No way. No, look, I would actually echo that. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I've got a pretty high tolerance when it comes.
But I'm a pretty strong guy. You know, like, right,
hate to toot my own horn.
Not much really, you know, gets in the way of my manliness and that.
Not to toot my own horn, but I've got a pretty high tolerance when it comes to scary movies. I watch them a lot. I enjoy them. I was actually very entertained throughout the whole thing.
Yeah,
they got an interesting premise. I think the subject, you know, the little boy and his mum and dad. And also some of his school friends, you know, I think they were all interesting subjects, and an interesting and novel, for me, story was told using those characters. It just happened to tread through a few of the old school, like, kind of thriller tropes that are a bit eye-rolly at times. But I don't know, I really came away thinking, you know what?
Would you recommend it?
That was good.
Would you recommend it?
Would I recommend it?
I actually would. Like, I'm not joking. Like,
well, okay, let me say this.
I actually would, but like, I know it's like sponsored by Universal or whatever, but like, I actually would recommend this.
Yes.
But don't go in thinking it's going to be the scariest movie ever. Just think it's horror dabbling with digital stuff. And
yes.
I think it works.
I mean, I would recommend it. I really liked it, but I also have the self-awareness to know that, like, my favorite game this year so far is Necromunda. And I know that Necromunda isn't Ocarina of Time, but I just really liked it for some reason.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel about this movie how I felt about Necromunda. I think it did a really good job with what it was trying to do, and I enjoyed it. You know what I mean? And so I'm not gonna say it's for everyone, but I say it's for me. And I guess like that's all I can really say.
Alright guys, so it comes out on the 18th of August in Aussie time, at least. I don't know if
Aussie time. We watched it on an iPad cuddling, because that's how our life is now.
That's how it is. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Universal, thank you very much for sponsoring the video. We will see you guys next time if we have a studio next week. Laymen out!
There is something inside our house.
How's his communication been going?
Poor guy still doesn't have any friends.
The answer is 8.
How come Oliver still gets to use his phone in class?
He's autistic, dude. just want to be your friend. Something in house.
There's nobody but your mom and your dad.
Do you know how your nightmares aren't real? Neither are ghosts or ghouls.
What are you staring at? Hey! What's this? This is Larry. He isn't from the world you know. Larry just wants a friend. Maybe we should stop reading. Will you be Larry's friend? He just wants a friend.
Hello? This thing wants our son.
A friend. He just wants a friend.
Stay away from my son! Did you turn it on?
Finish the story.
He just wants a friend.